Good morning, America. This is Michael Bassman here, your favorite newscast anchor since 2002. Now, if you haven't been following our 24-hour newscast, I feel really bad for you. But you turned in at a great time, because right now we're talking about glaciers. I personally know nothing about glaciers. So I'm gonna bring someone onto the stage, a famous author who does know something about glaciers. Please introduce Chester B. Chesterfield! What a guy, what a real guy. Chester, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Michael.
So, why don't you tell our viewers what the book's about?
So I actually brought a copy of the book with me.
That's fantastic. I love copies of books.
Show the label to the camera for all those at home. Yeah, it's entitled Glaciers, The Tale of Glaciers.
Wow, sophisticated.
Yes, no, I wanted to give readers a little bit of insight into what the book would be about. So the book itself, it examines why glaciers are melting, what the effects of this are, and what we can do to help stop it.
So, I'll bite. Why are they melting?
So glaciers are melting due to an excess of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. These gases are things such as H2O, CO2, and methane, or CH4. But CO2 is the biggest problem, and that's what we're all worried about when it comes to global warming. This is caused by human activity, such as factories, which are emitting the gas, cars, which through the exhaust emit the gas, and even things as little in our houses, such as toasters.
Toasters? Toasters actually affect CO2 levels?
Yes, I'm reporting that toasters affect CO2 levels.
Okay, you heard it here first on Good Morning America, just for the record.
CO2 is filling our atmosphere at an alarming rate, Michael. Faster than it can be controlled by our environment. Things like photosynthesis, which plants do, it takes in CO2 and then gives back out oxygen, which is what we breathe ourselves. And this can't happen with how much CO2 there is for all of the CO2 to be back absorbed. So here, picture it this way. Picture like a bathtub that's filling with water at an extremely high rate.
Now, Chester, I'm going to interrupt you right there. Anticipating that you'd bring up the bathtub effect, I have my field reporter, Doug, in a bathroom right now. Let's go to Doug. Thank you, Michael. So, on this segment, we're going to be really quiet, because I don't own my own bathtub. So, we broke into this house to use this bathtub for you, the viewers. Okay, basically, what I'm here to represent to you today is the bathtub model. Now, if my assistant would toss me this, which is toilet paper, which is not mine once again. So, imagine this is CO2 draining into the tub. Yeah, like that, okay? Now, if this rate is going faster then this drain can filter out this toilet paper. That's going to cause an excess of CO2 in the tub, and the levels are going to rise, which is why global warming happens to some degree. Back to you, Michael. Thank you, Doug. That was some inspiring stuff. So, anyway, can you get back to what you were talking about melting?
Of course. So what I was talking about with the global warming and carbon is that currently our atmospheric carbon level is at 406 parts per million, which is quite high and alarming. But it hasn't quite gotten to a 450 parts per million of carbon, which is what all us experts believe is the ecological tipping point for where we really can't go back.
So basically what you're saying is carbon is affecting global warming.
Yes, exactly.
It's causing global warming.
Yes.
So, in a nutshell, can you relate this all back to why the glaciers are melting?
So pretty much what it is all the greenhouse gases in our atmosphere are entrapping the heat back in the earth, which is causing things like the glaciers and ice to melt all over the world.
So, for our viewers who can't conceptualize what we're talking about at the moment, I have Doug on the scene at Lake Wingrove with a little demonstration for us. Doug, let's go to you.
Thank you, Michael. This is Doug here at Lake Wingrove to show you a demonstration of what would happen because of global warming to the glaciers. Now, if this lighter were to work and I were to put it in the snow, it would melt. That's it here on the scene. Back to you, Michael.
Wow. Thank you, Doug. Very informative. You know, you're a real trooper for braving the cold like this. Well, how cold is it? We're going to weather real quick.
Thank you, Michael. As I look around, it's quite cold, and the snow on the ground is also quite cold. I also regret not wearing shoes. Back to you, Michael.
Wow. Sounds quite nippy out there. Thank you, weather team. And Manchester, am I glad I'm inside? How about that one, bud, huh?
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get back to business here. So we talked about why melting is occurring in the glaciers. What are some of the effects of this?
Thank you. So as global warming causes the snow and glaciers to melt, several terrible things will of course occur. One is that global warming will actually reach new extremes. This is because the white snow and ice actually do an incredible job of reflecting the sun's rays back out into outer space.
You're talking about albedo.
This is indeed called albedo. But as there's less snow and ice, more heat will be then absorbed by the Earth. And then we call this a positive feedback loop because as glaciers and ice are melting, this will in turn cause more glaciers and ice to melt.
So just I want to pause you right there.
Yes.
You mentioned a positive feedback loop.
I did.
Another thing that's positive in my life is Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid. It's the coolest aid in your neighborhood. Sorry, we're sponsored by Kool-Aid. I'm required to do that. Continue. My apologies.
Thank you for that, Mr. Michael.
Yes.
Also, melting in glaciers will go into the ocean, and this will, of course, cause sea levels to rise. This is what I'm sure you guys are all familiar with when you think about the glaciers and ice caps melting. And this will cause a couple of nasty things to occur. One is that the addition of all this fresh water into the ocean will cause actually salt water to sink, which will completely screw up the currents and in turn screw up the thermohaline circulation. We don't actually, as scientists, even know exactly what will occur, but we assume it will affect the entire lifestyle of things in the ocean.
So for our viewers who don't know what the thermohaline circulation was,
Yes.
Would you care to describe a little bit of what that is?
That's pretty much just our planet's, how the warm and cold currents interact with each other, and this is going to be all screwed up by sort of the domino effect caused by glaciers melting. A second thing that will occur, which will more directly affect humans, is that more severe weather will happen all over the world. This is going to be more droughts inland because global warming will cause the water from the inland to actually evaporate at a faster rate than it will rain, which will affect crops, and people could go starving all over. And also more hurricanes and severe rainstorms will occur by the coast. A third thing that will happen is flooding will occur in places near coasts and at low sea level places.
So Chester, I anticipated once again what you were going to say with flooding. So I have Doug, still at Lake Wingra, you know what a trooper he is, and he has a little demonstration for our viewers about flooding in the United States. Let's go to Doug.
Am I good? Thank you, Michael. This is Doug. Now, if this was a map of the United States, the borders would be flooded. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Doug. You almost got all of that accurate. So, Chester, before we continue, I want to take a quick break to go to sports. So, sports, let's get it.
Am I good? Thank you, Michael. Today in sports, that team went over there, the ball was thrown all the way down there, and then right back over, and they scored, and they still lost. But later on, there's going to be a big game between the Reds and the Blacks, and you never know who's going to win. The Reds have been doing so well, but you know the Blacks, they're mediocre at best. Thank you. Right back to you, Michael.
Wow, there sure is a lot of things happening in sport ball nowadays. Man, am I glad I'm unathletic, huh? Whew. Anyway, getting back down to business. We discussed why the glaciers are melting, the effects of the melting. Now, I know that there's a lot of worried viewers back at home. Now, how can we prevent this?
Yeah, so there's a couple things we can do as people, which is just in general live greener lives. This involves stuff like taking public transportation as much as possible to avoid using your own cars, which emit the nasty CO2 into the atmosphere. And even simpler stuff like eating less processed food that come from factories and using more renewable energy in your own home, like solar and wind energy. And we can even do stuff like just turning off the water when you're brushing your teeth. In addition to this, as a scientist, I'm working with some of my colleagues to develop things such as carbon capture and storage. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've never heard of that.
Okay, well this is where, as factories are emitting CO2 in gas form, we're going to try to actually take it and put it somewhere so that it can't get into the atmosphere.
So by put it somewhere, do you mean underground or some other method?
Right now, we're thinking the best method would be underground, but we're not fully set on all this. In addition to this, we have some geoengineering schemes we're working on, such as putting like mirrors in space and on top of houses to create what we call artificial albedo, which is, you remember when we discussed about the ice and the snow, how it reflects the sun rays back into outer space. That's what we're trying to do artificially. And in addition to this, even stuff like putting chemicals into the ocean, which I know sounds bad, but we could get it to create artificial clouds, which would also affect the albedo levels.
Well, that's some powerful stuff right there. Now, before we conclude, we have one last segment we like to do here on Good Morning America, and that is Vehicle of the Week. I know you've been waiting for it. Let's get to it right now.
Are we good? Thank you, Michael! This is Doug again here with our segment for Vehicle of the Week. Now this here vehicle is a snow plow. S-N-O-W, space plow. Now this here plow, which can be put onto any vehicle, takes snow and pushes it over there. Now, that's it. That's it. That's all I got. Thank you, Michael.
Wow. Thank you, Doug, for enlightening us on that very crucial vehicle to American society, and societies all over the world, that is. So, back to Glaciers. In conclusion, let's hit some highlights of what we talked about today.
Yeah, so as we said in my book, Glaciers, the Tale of Glaciers, we discuss why glaciers are melting, and that's in relation to global warming, what the effects of this are, such as rising sea levels, and what we can do as people to help stop it, such as living greener lives. Once again, you guys should all check out my latest book. It's on shelves today, Glaciers, The Tale of Glaciers. In addition to my 2 other bestsellers, Scooby-Doo, We Found You, and So You've Lost Your Wallet, 5 tips to buying a new wallet.
Wow. Well, Chester, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Stick with us through the break to find out why dogs are dancing better. Next up on Good Morning America. We'll see you then.